Welcome back, guys. So this week we kind of threw a few topics around, and I think one of the things that
This
really
is a
stuck
good topic because,
is going to be a bit dangerous.
but I think it's going to be pretty honest out there. And I think this is the topic that we need to talk about there in the industry. And I think that it deserves people to actually react and give us their feedback, give us their take on scenarios. Uh, the topic today,
There's so much suspense.
wow, the topic today is recruiting slash poaching slash hiring from your competition slash something else. What?
Slash, just I think it's hiring.
You know, there's a lot of things out there, and in sales is such a funny game because nobody knows the actual mentality of the salesperson. A lot of salespeople actually want to move on because there's not a lot of growth. There's complacency from themselves. It has nothing to do with the company.
Sometimes.
The one of the podcasts we talked about was just going out and learning something else, right? Like
Sure.
moving from one industry to another.
Absolutely.
So now the whole hiring a salesperson, approaching a salesperson, whether they're gainfully employed somewhere or not, and having it come back on you. So number one, if you are a company and you want somebody from your competition, and you have a phone call, you have a coffee, you meet them at a trade event, and obviously you're interested in them because they carry themselves well in the industry. Now, if you talk to them about hiring them, giving them a job, whether it's a raise, no raise, money doesn't mean shit. Is that poaching?
See, the thing is, the way I look at it, I think we have similar viewpoints on this.
By the way, I am drinking for this conversation. Go ahead.
I think something that, I always like to preface this with I have a very limited experience compared to a lot of people that may disagree with you or disagree with me. So I want to preface the conversation with that. But in that scenario, though, I think that if you are hiring someone, you are hiring someone, right? And they want to come to work for you or with you, and it's not really a conversation of you're not allowed to touch my employees or you're not allowed to, come near my staff. I don't understand when and where people started drawing borders around their staff and saying that, if you come and talk to my employee, you're poaching and that's, ethical, unethical, or, against industry, advancement and growth. I don't really understand that because if I'm offering something truly of value, and this comes down to back to sales as well from just a general perspective, right? Let's say I'm hiring for an organization, we're hiring for 4Media. We walk up to another media company, another marketing company.
Joe Rogan, we're coming for you.
Young Jamie. If I walk up to somebody and put something in front of them that is valuable and they see validity and, credibility in making a move, not only from a financial perspective, which sometimes is a key factor and a decision factor in a lot of people's
I think
lives.
more so if you're moving up in your career.
Absolutely. And if there isn't an opportunity for someone to move up within their own organization, they're going to look outward. And a lot of organizations that I've heard of kind of have a bit of a ceiling where, I'll talk about this from personal experience. I know that, and this isn't a knock on the organization. It's a phenomenal place to work. The agency that I worked for 3 short years of time, there was kind of a bit of a limit in terms of where you could ascend to. Not saying that that's a bad thing or a good thing. They had a very, very interesting compensation structure that worked on the basis of activity and sales and growth and stuff like that. So compensation-wise, you wouldn't really find yourself necessarily lacking. But if you wanted to, let's say, grow and learn more things, or learn about management and go into management, there was only really one or two paths for you. One was either becoming a, bought in equity owning partner, which one was a significant financial investment and something that really, I think, if you're a younger, candidate, younger individual under 35, you may or may not have the savings, especially if you're looking to own a home or whatever that may be. The situations differ. The that kind of upward mobility, if it doesn't exist, and this is just a fly by the seat of my pants example, but if that upward mobility doesn't exist, I or whoever the candidate is going to look out. Now, that's not to say that's the reason why I moved on with my career. It was a different opportunity. We had the opportunity to work together. It was to do something new, change the industry, really kind of be revolutionary. And that was the reason why I made the move at the time. And I think that, in certain circumstances, especially when it's within the same level of the industry, wholesale to wholesale, contractor to contractor, I think is one of the worst in terms of the blowback for somebody hiring someone else's employee. I think we know, within the small market of Calgary, I can very confidently comment on there being significant conflict between individuals, between organizations, between organization and individuals, because somebody, either left the organization, started their own business, and then came back and said, "Hey, I worked with a lot of these guys when I worked at X company. Maybe I should," and I loved working with them. I'd love to hire some of these guys. And then it becomes a conversation of, well, you know what, screw you. And then there's bad, blood in the industry. There's bad blood out in the market. You can even go as far to become, litigation, et cetera, right?
But that there lays the question. Is it the responsibility of the employee to stay, or is it the responsibility of the employer to keep that person?
That's an interesting question, because,
well, like let's say it's for even money, right?
Sure.
Now, in the scenario you just laid out, there's a lot of excitement about going somewhere that's new, they're cutting their teeth in the industry. There's a lot of pressure. I know I love being under pressure, right? So if somebody leaves to do that, it's not the fact that this company has presented to them, because of course they're hiring. They're a new company.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to get work, everything like that. Yeah. If you know somebody, of course there is a comfort level with going somewhere, but it's that personality you're not going to change about going and starting from the ground zero. Whether it's like promises of management in the future or not, it's just a part of being something new.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I personally, I think it's up to the company to create the atmosphere to keep those people. If somebody approaches me and they're good, of course I'm going to sit down and hire them, right? Or get to the conversation where we're talking.
What about the other side? What if somebody approaches you with an opportunity?
For me,
for you
to come over. I think it's always important to sit down and listen, right? I think that just sitting down and talking and getting an understanding is good, right? I would say anybody on my team, if somebody was to approach somebody on my team, I think they'd be foolish not to sit down.
And it comes down to, it's your life. You have to make the decisions. And if you don't make the decisions yourself as an employee or even as an employer, in any circumstances, I feel like you got to take control of your own life. Right. And if, let's say I'm an employee, I work for you, and somebody taps me on the shoulder and I say, you know what, I kind of feel like maybe, although I'm not really happy here, there's a relationship and I don't want to, and that's a personal choice. But if it's at a point, you're in a circumstance, or you're in a situation where you're trying to grow, you've approached the leadership, you want to do more things, you're really trying to, get out there and be better and do better. And a competitor approaches you and says, hey, taps you on the shoulder and says, we can give you this. It's not really that much more money, but it may give you the opportunity to do what you want to do, which is maybe open up a track for management. Here's the roles. There's somebody retiring soon. It's like, well, that makes complete sense to me. And I also think a lot of it is in the way that the candidate or the employee handles the transition. I think open communication really plays into the blowback from that, you know, that employer. So for I'll use an example here. So, and this is this is not an actual story or an anecdote. It's just an example. I'm working for a wholesale, and a manufacturer who's a very, very entrenched partner of that wholesale taps me on the shoulder and says, "You're doing great work with our product at wholesale A. We'd love for you to come and work for us here at at our organization. We think you'd be working in the similar territory, whatever it is you're working on right now, similar clients. You'd just be doing it for us, and it would be a kind of a sideways move, but it's a move to a different, a different paradigm, a different perspective. Working as a manufacturer, and then now all of a sudden you're managing, or your wholesale that you used to work for is your customer,
Yep.
right? And a lot of the times, the wholesale, if you don't communicate that well, to your employer, regardless of whether it's a wholesale agency, whatever it is, I think that once you have that initial conversation, they say, "Hey, I've had this discussion. I know what the job is, et cetera, et cetera." Have more information about that position. I think it's imperative that you have a transparent discussion with either your immediate supervisor or the regional director, manager, whoever that top level management is for your territory. Be like, "Hey, this has happened. This is the conversation I'm having, and I think I'm going to make this move." But if you're a little bit shisty about it and you kind of just, extract yourself from your current role and then don't really tell anyone because you're afraid that it's going to be seen. And I think your attitude towards it as the candidate also really contributes to that overall impact.
Well, I always think that with any salesperson, whatever your role is, that the leadership is playing a role of the mentor as well. So I think you should always be able to approach your senior under a mentor kind of student sort of thing and have that open conversation, whether they leave or they stay or whatever. I think that it should always be a relationship of support, right? I've had many guys who have looked at other opportunities and we sat down, we talked about it. We did a pros and cons list.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what I know about it. Like, this is, do you see yourself going in that? I've had people join me with kids and they thought they could do the travel. Just 2 months into it, they're like, "I can't do this." Okay, let's adjust. Right? I've had people want to go to rep agencies and we sat there and we talked about it and I shared my experiences with them. What I find funny though is that because guys don't often have that relationship with their superior, there's so much bullshit that ends up happening in the transition or the transaction of them leaving one place and coming to the other. And it's filled with a bunch of hearsay and it's filled with the gossip and it just circulates the industry like somebody is the big asshole in this whole thing. When it really is the person who's coming, right? Like it's their decision to leave something that was stable to try something new, right? Whether they, some people want to go out and see what's out there and find out that what they have is secure, it's comfortable, and that's enough for them. But you do go out there and you have the conversation, right? And what I hate, and this is where I find it tough, is that when you do have that conversation and somebody offers you absurd amount of money, and then you were willing to match it, right? Like, where's the love all the way up until that point?
I find that interesting because, this happened to me early on in my career where I had requested for pay increases and top, right from the top level down, the instruction was no. And when I had suggested that, hey, I'm going to be making a move, my immediate supervisor said, at the time, it was like, well, what if I can get you that money that you always wanted? And then it becomes a conversation for me of, it wasn't a question of just money. It was a question of you guys understanding and recognizing the effort that I've put into this, and being able to, and literally being able to quantify that, and denying that quantification, and then somebody else validating my, internalization of
Yeah.
my value,
Well, it's kind of like
makes it seem like you don't really give a shit about me. But I know it's not that. I know it's not that. But at the same time, it comes off as that, and now it's just like, well, now you're just playing catch up,
yeah.
and nobody wants to be somewhere who's playing catch up.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of those things can actually be addressed by doing like a sit down every 6 months, every year, sitting down with your team, finding out where they're at. Are you happy? Are you challenged? Are you learning a lot? Are you like, what do you want to get out of your career in the next 5 years, next year, next, like whatever the case may be? But again, that is going into being a mentor as a leader to your team.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want in 5
Yep.
years? Because if we're going to put you there in 5 years, or maybe it's 10 years, we got to take the steps now to get you there.
And I think you're on the money with this one. I've every place I've worked at, of the 3 organizations I've worked with over the last 8 years, has had some sort of a employee performance review system. Only one of them has ever had, and I mean, I was unfortunate enough that I didn't actually get to that stage. I didn't make it in my employment, but only one of them has actually ever done a salary review.
Mhm.
And I think organizations, I mean, we can be kind of honest. One of the biggest reasons people want to make a move is for a little bit of a salary jump, so they can do one of the biggest, or at least one of the big reasons. Maybe not the biggest. I would say, for personally for me, one of the biggest reasons I look for is challenge. And if I'm
Yeah.
not challenged, I'm not interested anymore. Right? Money helps. Money's great. Money's maybe number 2 or number 3. For me, it's, I want to challenge, I want to learn, and I want to make some money.
Yeah.
And if any salesperson, if on the sales side, this
On
is, I
the
think,
sales.
on the sales
Yeah,
side.
I was going to say.
And if anybody who's on the sales side tells you that they're not really into the money, don't hire them, right?
Yeah.
And I think, for like, those are probably the 3 key things for me. And I've only ever really been at one place that even broaches the word salary in a review or a performance review, right? And I think people are afraid to do that because it puts them in an uncomfortable position where the employee can ask for more money.
Yeah.
And now I have to say no. And I think, in a lot of senses, that shows a bit of lag, or maybe just, kind of being behind the times in terms of, one, their own personal skill at negotiation. Right? If your
Well,
organization doesn't have a salary
yeah.
review day, it doesn't really, speak well of their approach and their ability to negotiate back with you. Right? If I come to you at, February of every year after all the accounting's been done and say, hey, I'd like a 17% raise this year because this, and this,
Yep.
and I want my salary to be whatever, $89,671.
Yeah. And 32 cents.
And 32,
Yeah.
make sure the 32 cents is there as well, right? And, and I really think that being able to handle that for the most part is not really there. And then the employee is then forced to bring salary, conversation into the play at a time when may not necessarily be convenient.
But do you not think that that is a good time, and especially like for the people that are projecting, like going into the next level of their career? I think it's a great time to talk to them about the business, right?
Yeah.
Like, Vresh, I'm glad you want to make $82,372.32 a year. You made enough for me to profit if I paid you actually $65,000 a year, because you only sell crayons at the counter and
Yeah.
I need you to sell this other product that we make money on.
Yeah.
So you're really good at selling commodities, but I need you to sell
Specialty products.
specialty products
Yep.
that you're going to invest more time, but you're going to actually be in there with the project. The customers are going to be more loyal. Like it's a good opportunity to talk to them about business, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or Vresh, I'd love to do that, but you travel 1,000 kilometers a day, and I just can afford to pay your mileage. So,
No, and I agree. And I think maybe bringing that back to the conversation of if I, as an employee, am unhappy, one, I think a lot of the onus needs to be on the employee as well to
Yeah,
be able to
100%,
convey
yeah.
that discontent, that lack of satisfaction, the dissatisfaction to the employer. And if once that is done, there's no catalyst and there's no action from the employer. I think at that point there is no holds barred,
Yeah.
and nobody can be upset
Yeah.
if X employee moves over. On top of that, if X employee is really good and really loves his job, guess what? Everybody wants them.
Yeah.
Right? If you've got the best, commercial service guy on your fleet and he is out there crushing jobs, or she is out there crushing jobs, and absolutely them. And they're able to put out sell the best equipment on their service calls, quality equipment, high profit. They're in and out in no time. They do clean work. They get great reviews, and they're known in the industry. They're active in industry associations. They're out and about. They have good relationships with salespeople. They get the best price on product because of their relationship. Do you really think that everyone doesn't want to hire them?
Yeah.
Right? And you'd be deluded if you think that they're not getting a call every other week for somebody to work from them. And I mean, I was a little bit worried about broaching this topic, and I think that there's this grand, and this isn't isolated to regional, Calgary or Alberta or anything. I think there's a lot of I won't hire your guys if you don't hire mine in the industry, or guys or girls, or whatever, right? I won't hire your people if you don't hire mine. And I think that's it's very interesting. I don't want to.
Are you talking competition to competition or business partners? So wholesale to manufacturer, wholesale to contractor, stuff like that.
I think the wholesale to contractor to agent, or wholesale contractor agent, that whole vertical chain, I think that's understandable because you have a working relationship, you have a partnership. Is it like an unwritten rule? I still don't think that that's valid. I'll use a personal example. So I worked at an agency, and at some point in time when I was working at the agency, about 2 years into my 3 that I was there, I expressed interest, or I was tapped on the shoulder by one of the manufacturers who we represented. I was recommended to one of their alternative divisions that we didn't represent as an agency. And I went through an interview process, and then I want to do an entire, episode on hiring and interviewing, and because I have so many comments. I've probably been on so many different interviews in the past 8 years. All of a sudden I go through the interview process. Everything's looking great. Conversation was good. They were like, "This is fantastic. I think we can make this work." And then it's just like radio silence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I exit the agency that I'm working for, and about a year or so later, and I get a call back, and it's like, "Oh, we're interested in you again for the same role. We couldn't hire you then because we had an unwritten rule internally that we don't hire from our agents," which I kind of respect, but at the same time, it's like, well, you knew this going in, or you didn't know this going in, so there's clearly a lack of communication internally. And the other thing was, when I exited the agency, 3 or 4 different manufacturers from the repertoire contacts me and says, "Hey, we don't approach people that are in our manufacturer, our agency's business," which I kind of understand that relationship, because it's like they're your salespeople, they're your feet on the street. You don't want to pull one of their people out just so you can use it for your brand alone. I get it, But at the same time, I'm like, do you want good people? Or do you know how to get good people?
Yeah.
I'm not really holding back on this one because I feel really strongly about this. And for someone who's, I think, uh, you know, been in the industry for a short time, I've experienced some of these little interactions, and they kind of puzzle me. But what I was talking about previously, where it was you have someone who's really good out there, I'm talking about competition. I'm talking about if
Yeah.
it's contractor to contractor or wholesale to wholesale.
But see, like
Or
myself, I would be angry at myself for not being able to keep somebody good if
Absolutely.
they were making a lateral move.
Absolutely.
That to me I would have to kind of reflect upon myself
Yeah.
and be like, how come we didn't keep that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Like he specialized in some things. Customers liked him. He was on the ball. If he needed to work late, if they needed to work late, they did.
Yeah.
Why weren't we able to keep that person, right? If they're making a lateral move. I think if they go to any other aspect of the industry, then it's nothing that I can offer them.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're a contractor, all you can give them is contracting opportunities, maybe some contracting and business development opportunities at the very most.
And let's look at the way that the industry has shifted. Like the sales reps now are getting more technical.
Yes.
Right? The only people they can draw from are either specialists within the wholesale or
which is
a
reducing
contractor.
slowly and not slowly, but quickly.
Quickly, yeah. Or getting a contractor.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of contractors don't have the sales acumen or the training or something like that. So you're really kind of spread thin. And then there is that point that you made. Do you want somebody good?
Yeah.
Right? Do you have a product right now that needs somebody on the ground right now that can go out there and make a difference right now? Or do you have time to train somebody? Whether it's training a contractor to be a salesperson or whether you're training a salesperson to be able to go in there and approach everything from a technical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years in order to invest that?
Yeah.
Maybe if you've got somebody in their 50s and they're retiring in 3 or 4 years and, stuff like that, you do.
Yeah.
Right? But if you've got a new product that's coming to market, you need a specialist. There's literally only like maybe 10 people in an area that you could draw from, and you may take it from one of your sales partners. Now, again, my personal opinion is that if I lost one of my team, not to a competitor, but to sales or a contracting business, I'd wish them well.
Yeah.
If they went to a competitor, then I would look at that intrinsically as something I couldn't offer, and why couldn't I offer, right? If we were a wholesale that just sold commodities and they wanted to go sell more technical or vice versa, maybe they're tired of going out and being technical and being on all the time. Maybe they just want to go and sell a widget for the lowest price, and that's it. Right? Yeah. You have to analyze the situation.
Yeah.
Right. And you should have an open enough dialogue in order to talk to each very openly, even if it's an exit interview.
Yeah.
Hey, where did I go wrong?
And I think, the interesting thing is that I've been a part of, a couple of interesting exit interviews, and maybe we can talk about that. I'm talking about exit interviews where I have maybe moved on to another organization and found something new. One of them was quite well done, very, very structured. This is what I'm working on right now. This is what you need to take over. This is what the jobs that are going. These are the projects that are up. This is the contractors. This is the engineer that are working on these projects. These are the specs that we have on these brands. Please make sure we follow up on them. And why am I leaving? X, Y, Z. The other one was more of we had a personal relationship with the management at the time, so it was more of a casual thing. It's like, yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. You want to,
mentorship.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to learn more. So I understand. Go ahead, right? And I think that the exit interview is something that maybe, you know what? Honestly, I can't really speak to this. Maybe you can a little bit from a contracting perspective. Do you think it happens on a regular basis on a
No.
contractor, or is it like you're out, get out? Or
Oh,
not hostile,
well,
but
like, I mean, there's definitely the hurt feelings approach of, don't worry about your shit, we'll mail it to you,
okay.
right? There's the other aspect of, like for me, so if it's construction, it's a very different process. If it's sales and that person has taken a job and they're on their way out, I don't make them work 2 weeks, nothing. It's like, hey, good luck. Grab your stuff,
Let's go.
say goodbye to
Yeah.
everybody. We'll see you at the events, right?
It's funny that you say that because I've heard this from a couple of different people that I've met in the industry. The whole 2 weeks aspect.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that, from a perspective of especially going to work for your competitors.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm working for wholesale A, I've been hired by wholesale B. In a lot of situations I have heard of with people that I've worked with in the past where they're like, they were really upset that I didn't give them 2 weeks. Like, what? You want somebody who's going to work for your direct competitor to sit around your office for another 2 weeks and absorb as much information as they can and to be able to do significantly more damage?
But see, I don't actually think they're actually absorbing anything. I think
they're also wasting time.
I think their head is so far gone that they're looking and they're researching the other company and stuff like that.
Yep.
There's probably training manuals they've got at home that they can't take their mind off of. So I think the production of that person who's leaving actually drops so substantially that you're just throwing away 2 weeks worth of wage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they're.
Well, you have to pay that to them anyway, though. The 2
not
weeks.
in sales.
What do you mean?
If a sales guy quits, there's no severance in that.
There's 2 weeks.
No.
Is there not? Oh, it's noticed.
No.
Is it not?
If a sales guy comes into my office and said, if you came into my office and said, Jeff, I'm going after this other opportunity, I'd like to give you my 2 weeks. I'd say, hey, Vresh, thanks for the offer of the 2 weeks. Why don't you just go today and either take the time, take your 2 weeks to rest at home, get into that frame of mind, or you can go start with them right away.
But
if it's sales, for sure.
Sure. So
if
I don't think that's the case, though. I think in the scenario where you give 2 weeks, right? If the employer says, we don't want you to give 2 weeks, they have to pay you payment in lieu of notice.
I think you should check in on that for sales.
I think we got to do a little fact check. Producer Tom over
We
here.
got fact check over here.
We'll have something pop up right underneath here. I think we'll just have like Donald Trump saying wrong right underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe coming back to the
how about we just say, if somebody leaves you, take your hurt feelings, bottle it up, grab a cocktail if you need to.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive. And just reflect on the good times you had.
Yeah. And I think that, and maybe that's an interesting comment, reflecting on the good times. I think a lot of people, and I mean, this I think is human nature, is to focus on the negative. In general, this is just like a general.
Well, it's so again, like I've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about it even recently, and the issue is that it's a rejection, it's an emotion, right? If somebody leaves, there's an emotion, and you usually react emotionally, right? And that right there has the ability to either tarnish that year, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years of relationship. Because you say something emotionally.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's a good time at that point. The person has presented their case. You invoke a 24-hour rule. Thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit on this. I'd love to sit down and have a coffee with you tomorrow.
Yeah.
If it's Friday, talk to you on Monday.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't get emotional and you don't start throwing out outlandish things and so on and so forth.
And I think I'm wondering maybe if that approach of immediate reaction. So we've been talking mostly about somebody leaving to go and work for the competition.
Mhm.
Okay, how about a different scenario now? And I think this is something that has happened. I know within the industry in the Calgary region. I know it's happened in the Edmonton region. I know it's happened. I know it's probably happened in every you know
Corner of
major
the earth.
any major market. And I mean, there's a lot of examples within our area here that come to mind when I say this. But what if you have, let's say, an employee who quits to start their own business, makes it in their business, and then comes back and hires some of your
Okay,
employees?
so
And I think this, for the most part, really majorly applies to the contracting side of the business and perhaps the agency side of the business, because I don't know of many startup wholesales or startup manufacturers that just make it within a couple of
well,
years.
okay, so quickly we can talk about the agency thing. I don't think there's a lot of manufacturers that follows an individual.
Not many.
Not
Sure,
many,
not many.
right? It's very few. So if a sales guy leaves and thinks that he can bring a manufacturer on, good luck. I don't think it is that easy.
Okay.
If it is somebody going to leave you to become a competitor, and their ability to take people from your company obviously affects you in a greater way. Now, one of my favorite sayings of all time is the CEO and the CFO having the conversation. Um, what if we train? The CFO says, "Well, what if we train this guy and he leaves?" And the CEO says, "Well, what if we don't train him and he stays?"
Yeah.
Now, what I'm learning from that is if you are training somebody and you're training them to be your competitor based on your good business sense, that's not a bad competitor to have out there.
Sure. I mean,
Now,
I know a lot of people that would disagree because they would say that, well,
well,
this
it
person
depends
that
on
you
what side of the coin you're on with that one,
sure, because I
right?
mean,
Like,
an argument that could be made is that, well, this person we groomed from day one. They came through their apprenticeship and became a journeyman with us, and then they were one of our top performers. They knew everything about our business. They took all of our business secrets, and then they started their own, not secrets, but they took all of our business strategies and and applied that for their own business, and it worked. And that's great. We're happy for them up to that point, and then they came and took all the
yeah.
employees that they worked with.
Okay, so
And
again,
yeah,
I revert back to, did we do enough to keep our team? Because tell me what a successful salesperson is. A successful salesperson is somebody who builds relationships and leverages them.
sure.
A good leader is somebody who grooms and builds their team, right? Um, if you had a team of people and you and I split and you started your own thing, would that rock me? Yes, right? I would say that my company is good enough that we're probably going to go hire other people and we're probably going to rebound pretty good,
Yeah.
right? Um, you know, it is a tough thing because that is going to depend on what side you are. If I go somewhere and all the people that I know from my
Ex-company, yeah.
past say, "Hey, I'm interested to see what you're doing. Like, I want a chance to come and work with you." Right? If you have somebody enthusiastically coming and knocking on your door and saying, "I'm going to try and be a difference maker for you,"
Yeah.
it is tough to turn that down.
And I think maybe the conversation isn't so much about when somebody, forms their own business, separates from yours, and then people go to them. That's not the conversation. Right. And even in those situations, though, people look at it as, he or she took my
Yeah.
crew, right? And I think, and this is, I think, a very uniquely contractor situation in our industry. Not, and I don't think, I mean, wholesale to wholesale, like I said, it's not really an entrepreneurship issue. Agency, not really.
Yep.
Manufacturer, not really. So, and I think, we got a lot of contractors out there listening. We'd love to hear your feedback on kind of what your thoughts are on this, because I think it's a question that we have. I've had. We were sitting. I remember we were sitting at. I'm not really going to use names or places, but we were sitting at a steakhouse. We had a successful event. We were sitting at a steakhouse one night, and we had a contractor sitting with a bunch of us, sales, inside sales, outside sales, technical managers, and we had a contractor with us, and we'd had a few whiskeys, and I think kind of a lot of that emotion came out. It's like, well, we have an agreement that I won't hire your people and you don't hire my people, and then all of a sudden, like you have my, you took my best service tech, or you took my best new, construction site guy, or my best superintendent, and now I'm mad, so I'm going to sue you for doing that. And I think there's no basis for this, and we had it. We I think both of us were kind of holding back on being like, I don't know about this, because
Well, I think in the position we were at, like
we were trying to court the customer. And
well, no, but it's also it is a sensitive thing. We've been drinking. It's not a time to talk about.
Of course,
If we sat down and had a coffee and somebody was asking our interpretation of it or our kind of view of it, I think that I would present it of in the way that we have today. But this is why this topic, depending on what side of the coin or what side of the fence you are, this is why we need to hear from people. Because it's a very interesting thing. I think cooler heads will prevail, and I think that this is again the very important part of an exit interview.
I can already hear, all the people yelling at their, yelling at their laptops or their phones, telling us that we're wrong. And we'd love to hear from you guys and girls.
I'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah,
like if anybody wants to come on here,
and
argue their point, I'll bring a third glass if we need to, and call a taxi home.
Might need a new bottle though. So.
Yeah. But I would love to hear it from the other side. I just take a look at it as there's always a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
Whether it's my lesson that sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that this topic could be widely debated on 3 or 4 episodes. That
absolutely
we could talk and talk and talk, and we could have people with different views. And I think the lower the level goes on the bottle, we could get into some really good points. But I'm going to leave this show on this note of, if you got something to say it.
Comment. Let us know either on our YouTube page.
Hell, you can give me a phone call and I'll record it. Like, I don't care.
We do call-ins on our podcast. So if you'd like to call in and talk to us at some point in time, we'd love to have you on. We have that ability for us right now. So we'll let you know about when we're taking calls. Maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Yeah, there might be a lot of bleeps. Tom, we can bleep now?
Yeah.
Oh, we can bleep?
We can bleep. So, yeah, I mean, I am really interested in hearing, it's 2 sales guys here sitting and talking about perspectives, when I'd really like to hear from a contractor business owner who's lost some employees, a contractor business owner who's gained some employees as well, right? And what their perspectives are. And I think that's really, really where we're going to gain real perspective and get that differing viewpoint, because someone's going to come and yell at us and say, you're absolutely wrong because I worked my entire life to build this business. And then I trained all these people and made them spitting image of myself. And then they turn around and then they take all my people from them because why? Because they're on site with them every day and they know them better than I do because I'm in the office. Right. So I'd love to hear that perspective. Tune in next week. We're going to have some awesome guests on. We've got good lineup coming. And maybe we'll put this question to them.
Okay, I'm wrapping it.
On that
That's
one.
it.
Cheers.
We're out.
Have a good one, guys.